Alright, howdy everybody in YouTube land. Welcome to part 2 of our ALR childhood PC restoration series. So as you saw in the last installment, we did a quick overview and, we recapped the power supply, cleaned the floppy drive, found the ROM chips, but still no post. So I grabbed out my post card and put that in there, and no activity on the bus at all. Nothing. Just completely dead. I do have the reset line will go, will assert itself a little bit and come back, so that's working fine. But that's it. So now we need to start troubleshooting this thing and taking a look further. I don't know if I can fix it, but going by my past history with working on computers and this thing, I need to start looking in this area over here. And right away, now that I've zoomed in, right away, look what we have here. That's not good. See, we got some corrosion there. Nothing crazy, but that is definitely a problem. Yeah, so, okay. Now, let the board back out. Throw that battery in the trash can. Let's look on the back side. Can't tell if that's corrosion in the vias or not. Oh, that's a problem. That is most definitely a problem. So, yeah, that fucking Varda batteries. Every time. Every single time. So, I bet, if I were to hazard a guess, I bet the Varta corrosion is why this thing's not working. Okay, so what we need to do now, just to make this a lot easier, I'm going to set this board off to the side. I'm going to pull the power supply back out of here so I can set it on the bench, and we're going to get this thing out of the way. That way I can work on this thing on the bench, troubleshoot it, and see what's going on. In the meantime, get the hell out of here. Yeah, so I gotta get that out, and then we're gonna start working on this board. I'm gonna do some metering and checking and see if the traces are open, which I'm sure they probably are. So I'm gonna go through there, check the via, check the traces, just do my default battery damage stuff that I've dealt with on like Macintosh machines and stuff like that. So let's clear that out of the way. After a quick douse of white vinegar and clean and scraping all that off, we can see the extent of the damage here. So that does not look good. It's probably bad. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab my little fiberglass pen tool and clean that stuff up and see how bad it really is. Should have known we were going to have this trouble because you saw the battery. Alright. Any kind of luck. That's actually not bad. The via doesn't look good though. It might be broken right at the via. It might be broken right here at the via. Clean that up some more. Yeah, I think it is. It's broken right at the via. Well, pretty sure. So, okay, where do you go? Goes under that chip somewhere. But I don't know where. So I'm going to have to grab the meter and find out. Oh, one of those cases I wish I had a tripod handy. Both of these actually buzz out from about here. One of them goes to this pin there, and the other one goes to pin 4 over here. So both of those buzz out to this chip. I'm not going to be inclined to believe that that's my issue. However, let's take a look at the one that's on the back side. So that's pretty bad. I'm going to have to take this Singapore sticker off and check everything underneath it. But I'm going to have to go from here to here and check this trace. Because even though I cleaned it off, it looks very rough. So, I love this. Made in Hong Kong. Made in Singapore. Where was it made again? Taiwan? United States? Hong Kong? Singapore? I don't know. Anyways, let's peel that off. Alright, so I have not only this fiberglass tool, but I also have this little engraver tool. And I use that to clear off the vias and stuff like that, which a friend of mine pointed me out to that technique, and I actually like it. It's better than having that whole Dremel. Anyway, so I checked all the traces, checked the vias up here. Everything is good except for this trace. This trace is broken somewhere in here. So would this one trace stop the whole board from working? Maybe. I don't know, but I do know that it is a problem. So we're going to take us a little patch wire and we're going to go from here to here, and then we're going to try this board again. I have that wire patched, but I got my reservations because that's only a speaker connection for the internal speaker, so I don't think it's going to do anything. Alright, well, here goes nothing. Reset line released, but nada. Not a thing. Yeah, that's what I thought. I didn't expect anything, because that's the only one I saw broken. Everything else tests fine. This one's going to take some thinking. This is all it does. And this is repeatable. Alright, so I've been screwing around with this for a little bit. I pulled the 8042 out just to roll it out, and it didn't make any difference. I resoldered some of the connections on this board because some of them were suspect, but as I thought, just to rule it out, it still didn't do anything. So I am running out of thoughts here, but I've noticed it tries to do something, and if I touch these two connections here that were eaten by the batteries, hear that? There's a problem there. Even though I was getting continuity here, where's the problem here? Something's wrong. That's open. I think we're onto something here. It's probably open at the via from the other side. Because from here to here is fine, but from there on out it's not. So that's a floating address line or a data line, and that's going to be a huge issue. So let me trace that down and we'll patch that up. Actually, one of these two traces runs off to the 8042, so I had to put the 8042 back in. Everything's good. Possible the 8042 died with the corrosion there, I don't know, but we're back to where we were before. It's just running through the same code over and over again. Not sure what's dying, but something is. So I've been working on this board for a bit, and one thing that I've noticed is I've tried to do the chilling trick. I put it in the freezer, let it totally freeze up, didn't change the behavior. And I also let it thaw all the way out, didn't change the behavior. So something's going wrong here, and I'm not entirely certain what. My biggest worry is the chipset. It looks like it's all custom chips and stuff like that, you know, and who knows if I can even get those. But I did check these two lines, and one of those is the reset signal coming from the 8042, and the other one is the coprocessor interrupt line. How do I know that? Well, let me explain. So this chip here is an MIC 9211. I can't find any data on that. I can't find any data on this or this. But I found data on the 82C206. That is an interrupt controller, a DMA controller, and all of that other fun stuff. Now, that chip has some information to what it's paired with. It's paired with the NEAT 286 chipset. Okay, so I look up the NEAT 286 chipset series and I found data. Guess what? It is also a 211. It's also a 215 and it's also a 212. But it's the 82C 211, not the 9211. So this is just a rebranded version of the PC chips and technologies NEAT 286 series. So guess what I did? I went online and I found the manual, the 82C 212, which shows the basic architecture of this system. And then here's the official manual, which is right here. So that is the 82C 206. That certainly looks familiar, doesn't it? So here we have the data sheet for this chip. So what I've done is I've printed out the relevant parts that I care about, like the pinouts. So now I have pin diagrams to figure out what we got going on, as well as basic information such as what all the control lines do. Now, the next thing I did was I did some research on this chipset, and it's basically a clone of the IBM 5170. So I did some more research, and I found the schematic of the 5170 motherboard. So I also printed that out. So now I have potentially everything I need to make this work. Now, this is all discrete stuff. So obviously it's not the same thing, but what this does tell me is what all of the buses are and what they do and how they're connected. Because this does not. It doesn't tell me what an XD is. It doesn't tell me what XA is. But I know what everything else is. The memory data bus is here. All of the SD, all that is the same as the IBM 5170. So between the two manuals, the IBM manual and this, I know what's going on with this board. Or at least how it's designed. It's literally an IBM 5170 clone. And it uses the same upper, lower, split across 16-bit BIOS chips. So I could use the 5170 diagnostic ROMs, but we're not getting that far. Sometimes the chip enable gets low and it executes codes and gives up. Sometimes it's only low for a fraction of a second and then it gives up, but you can see activity on the bus just looping and looping and looping, but the ROM is not being selected. Now, I've noticed if I remove all of the RAM, the behavior changes on the logic probe. It doesn't have the same looping cycle. And this chip here is responsible for, this is the DRAM controller, and it's responsible for selecting ROM and RAM. So there's some kind of decoding issue happening with this chip here. Or the DMA controller is interrupting too soon or something, and it's getting stuck in this DMA loop. Or the system thinks it is, so it's stuck in this DMA loop. It's one or the other. The other anomaly I ran into is this chip here. So this chip here has a external bus high enable XBHE signal, which is, oh hell's bells, it's in here somewhere. There it is, right there. XBHE pin 57. That's low all the time, no matter what. Even with the CPU card out, that pin's low. What's not immediately apparent to me is why that pin would be stuck low. So it's like it's stuck in 16-bit transfer mode. And from what I understand, I could be wrong, because I do not know the AT architecture that well, but what I understand from reading through this documentation is XBHE. X byte high enable is an active low signal indicating the high byte has valid data on the bus. It is an output when the CPU is in control of the bus and an input when the DMA controller is in control of the bus. So, that's the part I do not know. Okay, that pin is being driven low. So the question then becomes, is it being driven low by this guy? Or is it being driven low by this guy? This powers up default, everything disabled. This should not be driving this line low. That's an issue. So I already know XBHE is driven low in an active low state when the CPU is not even in the board, so it's not supposed to do that. So the fact that we have that going on, we know we got a problem. Now here's the other thing too, is I don't know why this board died. I'm assuming it could have been from the battery damage. But the thing is, this machine could have died very early in its livelihood, you know, within the first 3-4 years of being existing. So back in, 94, 95, this machine could have died and got shelved. So this thing quit working way back then and then got shelved, and the battery leak was secondary just due to age. That's an assumption. But also, if you remember by watching my previous video, the IDE connector also was plugged into the floppy drive as well as the hard drive. I don't know if that's hurt anything, but if it did, well, that's certainly another thing, because that's also the data bus, the address bus is there. So if one of those data lines is shorted and it goes to enable the transceivers, it's going to read that 0 flag all the time. And that's going to cause errors because this is being driven low and it's not supposed to be. But in the event that the IDE is not being used, these buffers should be tri-stated anyways. However, some of the ISA signals are here and they go to these chips. So if one, like a ISO 16 is active low, so if it was being driven high as an output and it's forced low, it could short the driver inside the ICs. So yeah, it could be any one of those situations. But what we have here is this is the address buffer. This is what buffers the address between the external buses and the memory and IO and all that stuff. So this is the transceiver buffer IC. This is the real-time clock, CMOS memory, the 2 DMA controllers, all of that crap from the AT architectures in this chip. This is the DRAM controller. Contains all the DRAM signals. It also includes the ROM select line for this. And this is the system controller. This is responsible for all of the ISA signals, the FPU signals, the CPU, address decoding, all of that stuff is done in here. All of the enable and select signals are also in there. So if there's a problem with any one of these chips, the whole thing is not going to work. All right. But also leads me to the conclusion, now that I know what this board is, that is a 286 CPU socket, which I thought it was like maybe an FPU or something like that. So this board is designed to be a 286. They just figured out some way to expand the features of the 286 chipset with this board, giving it 386 capabilities. So, yeah. Now, what I have to do at this point is I need to check the XBHE signal to this guy here, and I need to check all the states of this chip on power up without being initialized from ROM, without the CPU in there. I gotta see what this is doing, because if there's control signals that are stuck low or stuck active when they're not supposed to be, because I do have the data sheet to this chip, if we have that problem, this chip is bad, and that's going to be our issue. Now, fortunately for me, I was able, looking up the Chips and Technologies version, that is part of the data set, I was able to find all 4 of these chips new old stock except for this one. I got that one used, but these 3 are new old stock. So I went online and I placed an order. I ordered all 4 of these chips just so I can have them on hand. That way, if I can troubleshoot it down to a specific chip being dead, I can replace it and the board should come alive. But XBHE is stuck low, and I'm starting to suspect something related to that is where our issue is. One of these 4 chips is screwed. So we just need to find out what. So I figured it was time to bring out the oscilloscope, because I'm pretty much striking out everywhere. I thought the problem was the interrupt controller, but it's not, because the interrupt controller has, it's not enabled right now, and the interrupt acknowledge is not coming back. So it's time to pull out the scope. I'm probing the buffer IC, which is this guy here. Look what I'm spotting. I'm right on the third one over. It says D4, which is pin 9. Look what I have on D4. See those ramps? That is not normal. That is bus contention, folks. So, that is a problem. So, we got a problem with D4. Let's take a look at D12. D12 is doing the same thing. Let's take a look at D5. D5 is doing the same thing. So, D13, these are the data bits right off the CPU card. That's not normal. That is not normal. So, something is driving the bus at the same time. Yeah, this is D13. Yeah, so all of these data lines coming from the CPU are doing this. So something is driving the bus when it's not supposed to be. That is severe bus contention. So there's a chip in here that's being turned on when another chip is also turned on. It's fighting each other. What could that be? And this is right off the CPU. So, there we have our problem. Now we need to find out why. Now we know what. Now we have to find out why. Why is there bus contention on the data bus coming off of the CPU card? I may have mentioned this earlier in the video, but I believe, folks, we found our problem. So, let's take a look at the DMA controller. Now, right here, DMA memory read. That, according to the data sheet, should never go active unless there's a DMA request happening and the CPU hits the hold and relinquishes the bus, which is not happening. So if we take a look at this, this control signal, where is it? Right here. Look at this. DMA memory read is going toggling, right? If we come up here to this buffer, this I'm pretty sure is part of the DMA because I have the same signal on pin 1. Now if I look at the input side, it's nice and clean. But if I look at the output side, look at that. Things are coming on when they're not supposed to be, which follows itself all the way back up here, which, look at that. So, if I compare again from that point to this point, that's clean. But if I come over here, let's see, where am I at? I'm on the wrong one. So if I come over here, it's clean. Come over there, it's not. And it's continged kind of in the same areas. So, we have an issue going on here. So the DMA memory read keeps occurring, okay? So let's take a look at the hold signal from the CPU that would relinquish itself during the DMA requests. It's not asserted, it's never active. CPU is never giving up control. So that means the DMA is trying to control the bus while the CPU is controlling the bus. It's not supposed to do that. That's an issue. That is an issue. So hold A. Now let's take a look at the hold acknowledgement signal, which is right here. That acknowledgement signal would be on this on the chip. And guess what? It stays active low all the time, but that's an active high signal, or that's an active low signal. So this signal is low all the time. Oh wait, never mind. I'm not getting a good connection on the pin. Okay, so here we go. Never mind. Scratch that. It stays high all the time. So there's no DMA acknowledgements occurring. So let's take a look at the request lines. Nothing. So let's see, where am I at? Okay, so that's XIOW. I keep forgetting. Hold on, let me fix this problem. That's annoying me. Alright. Makes me look like an idiot. So, XIO right. Well, that's all part of the DMA negotiation. That's never being asserted. So DNA acknowledgement. High. High. All those are high, and the data sheet should say that these are all low, inactive, or high. They only trigger on the transition, I should say. Okay, so everything is nothing is telling the DMA bus to go. So next to that, yeah, nothing is telling the DMA bus to go. None of the requests are activated. Let's look at the XIO read. She's over here. And guess what? It's never asserted. So why in hell and tarnation do we have this? That chip is bad. Because there's no reason why that should ever get activated. So what I think I want to do is I'm going to power this down right now. And I'm going to buzz out where this goes in the motherboard. And I'm going to check for every condition. Because there could be another chip that's driving this one. Because the data sheet says DMA-MR, which is this guy right here. That is an active output from this chip. There should be nothing in the bus driving that signal except for this chip. So I'm going to check everywhere else. And I want to make sure that there isn't another chip here that has failed in some weird way. And I have another signal there. Like, for example, one of these 74 series chips could be failed internally, and there's a signal crossed. Like there could be a bus request or a bus, like an address strobe or a data strobe or some kind of signal like that that's shorting over to this one, which is going to cause this transceiver to turn on and fuck the whole bus up. So, yeah. The other thing I want to do is I want to drive that signal high and leave it high, which might damage something, but it will disable this thing from ever trying to do a DMA request. So it should boot in that case. Because yeah, right now we have bus contention, and as long as there's bus contention, it's never, ever, ever going to work. So we've got to get down to the bottom of that, and I think I'm hot on the trail here. I chased it down. The DMA MEM-R goes to XMEM-R on this chip, and the input to this buffer here where the output goes off to the ISA socket. So this directly enables the memory, external memory read on these two chips here and here. So no wonder this thing is colliding, because it's trying to drive the external memory at the same time the CPU is trying to... Something's wrong here. Let's figure it out. Did some more chasing. That signal comes to this buffer, which also goes to the XMEM-R on this chip and this chip. And according to the datasheet, this chip can drive that. This is an input-output. So XMEM-R can be driven by this chip. So the contention could be caused by in here, enabling that signal low when it's not supposed to be. So, yeah. So when I thought that's bad, which I don't think so, it could be this one. I did try pulling it to ground and pulling it positive. And if I pull that line to ground, the IO ready light will light up. So if I drive it high, you know, it doesn't change the execution behavior. It actually still won't boot, but yeah, that's weird. It makes me wonder if there's some decoding issue going on between these two chips. The XMEM-R is an input only on this guy, so this is driving it low at the wrong times. Yep, it's driving it low at the wrong times. And that's crazy to me. Alright, starting to grasp at straws here, but what I ended up doing was making a cheat sheet. So I had them all out in front of me and I know what's what, so I don't shuffle through pages all the time, so I keep that there. The address bus data bits, they're all connected. There's no problems there. But what I did was I borrowed a 286 CPU out of one of my machines, took the feature card out, and now when I turn the power on, it powers up straight to code 90. But it's still not working, because I can look at the data bus here, and I still have bus contention right there at the top. So there's definitely some problems going on. See that blip? It's weird. That one's bad. That one's, I mean, it's almost like the same thing. I'm getting the same sorts of data. Well, here's some of that there. Yeah, look at that data line. Yeah. And that chip gets roasting hot. So something, wow. Something, yeah, there's something, there's literally a bus contention somewhere in here. It's, I thought it was this, but the DMA line is controlled by this line over here through this buffer. And it's this line that's toggling, not this one. So this chip isn't doing anything yet. This is doing all of that work. So somewhere between these two chips is bad. It could be this, but I'm only seeing the contention on the CPU side of the data bus and not the other side, because this buffers the data bus from the CPU to the external bus, or the X bus. Well, the X bus looks clean. So, it's weird.